back to working on this Trackjeep here, and we're going down the list, making some battery cables or whatever. They came with these ends. I don't like them. I actually really like these cheesy red and black ones. You can't confuse them. Super cheesy, whatever. But I want to show you a neat little trick that my dad showed me for putting these together. See how it's got the space to put the wire through? He always told me, flip them so it's facing down the other way. Helps clamp into it. I got my new battery cables on there. Let's fire this thing up for the first time with these new headers. I'm still waiting on my V-band, so I don't have the pipes coming out or up or whatever I'm doing, but I can at least start it and move it. So let's see what these tri-wires sound like. Hell yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm already liking that better already. That's way smoother and nicer sounding. That's what we're after, and everything's where we want it. So I'm going to go ahead and get the battery strapped down and move it up so I can start working on the next thing, which is moving the steering ram. Okay, I got the Jeep moved up to where the welder can reach, and this is what the old setup was. It's mounted on the frame on one side, and it's got this plate welded to like the old bell crank stuff, and the frame's all broke and split. It's also in the middle of the tie rod, and it's bent it and stuff. So I'm going to relocate this, and I'm going to build some clamp-on style mounts for the axle that is going to hold this end of the ram, and this end is going to get moved closer over to the edge so it has less power over bending it. And I'm going to get started on that. I just wanted to give you an appearance of how it was. It worked, but a little rough. I'm going to cut this up and split these into two pieces at 3 inches and cut them in half so that they clamshell around the axle. I'm not really set up for doing time lapses or anything like that, but I got my rusty trusty square body here. I split these pieces and to make the clamshells, and as you can see, the inside diameter of these worked out pretty dang perfect. Ooh, nice tight fit. And so what I'm going to do is one's going to sit up against here, and the other one's going to sit up over against the spring perch. I'm going to weld the housing just so it doesn't separate or anything, because there's a ton of force on this. Started wire wheeling the tube here to weld it to the differential, and it actually almost looks like it's already starting to slide out. See the little space there? So good thing I noticed that, and also a good thing that I noticed this. The brackets that the previous owner had made, he had them going up to the kingpins, and 2 of them are missing. Oh wow, the brackets all bent and stuff, so I guess that we have to add that onto the to-do list. I've tried explaining the importance of not bolting your projects and going through them, especially something used. Same project, different day. Spent all morning going out trying to buy these nuts and bolts because I need them for converting this to a double shear instead of a single shear mounting on this. And then I noticed that in moving my ram, the hoses are going to be definitely too short. So I just went out and bought a little 90-degree fitting so that I could get the length of this. It used to come out way straight and around. I'm just trying to get a mock up here and keep this thing moving. It's really important when you're doing these projects to spend your money carefully and not buy things several times over. So I just gained a few inches. Should be enough to get on to moving the ram. So I've mentioned a ton of times about how weak the frames and everything on these are, but one of the big reasons that I'm moving the steering is because the design of it's wrong. The location of the pins, they need to both be this way. One's that way, the other one's this way. So they have to be the same way, and I'll show you why. Because see here, it's got no play front to back because it's locked solid here. It can't pivot, and what happens is when this spins on this, I'll show you exactly good representation. So if my thumb wrist was the knuckle, steering knuckle, ball joint, pivot point, whatever, as you turn, you can see it gets further away, comes in, comes back. So it needs to have pivot room. So that's the main reason that we're doing this is to get these so that the steering will move freely and not have this bind. The frames are inherently weak on these, but you know, a big part of the frame cracking and breaking and everything is because of the bind in this. You can see the tie rod and everything is all bent. So I had to actually cut the bolt out of there. The 1-inch bolt was bent. So, getting to it. Wow, the sure is so much nicer to look at. I got that piece of threaded rod out of there. Most of the stuff's cut off the edge of the frame. It's nice and open looking. I'm enjoying this, and now it's time to start rebuilding. I can cut all the old bell crank stuff off because this thing will probably always have hydraulic steering, or maybe someday it'll have a steering box in the front, you know, from a newer thing, but I think it'll always be like this. Okay, so you can see in here, it's hard to see, but I got my weld on the housing, diff housing to the axle tube, and I made the two of these clamp-on style brackets. That was a lot of work. They sell these, All-Star Performance, and other companies make them, but not for, I haven't seen any for a smaller diameter tube like this, so I did this. You'll see why. I'm going to start making the next pieces, but I wanted to show you that stage. Well, I got this side tacked up in here. You can see now it's double shear. It's going to have this here and then this down here. I got to finish this up, obviously, and that's just floating there. I'm going to make the next part of the bracket that welds onto my two clamps. It's what used to be off the back of this truck here. The old dump bed came in some nice material, so I'm going to repurpose it and get it on there as my ram mount. Well, the lights are starting to set in my garage, but I got the ram all tacked up into position. Next time I work on it, I'm going to jack it up and cycle the steering and make sure that nothing binds. That's just a spacer, obviously, but I got that end loosely attached. I'm going to beef it all up once I make sure it works, but there's the bracket that I made. You can't really see, but it sits on and welds across. Very nice. I got to make a top one so it's double shear and weld it on. Hell yeah. Well, it's the same video for you, but a different day for me. I got my parts in the mail, finally. Look at this. I got some Summit Racing V-bands. These are a great quality and budget alternative to some of the other manufacturers, and I got a U-bend pipe. I haven't quite finished up the steering ram, but I figured that I want to finish the exhaust because I'm super excited about it, so I'm going to do that before I finish up the other thing. And that way, when I start it, it's got the new exhaust on it, so I get two birds stoned at the same time. Awesome, let's go. Got her jacked up so I can start it up and test out the steering. And ooh, got the new exhaust pipes all done basically, minus final weld. I'm pretty happy with how this came out. Cool stuff, can't wait to hear it. I gotta finish welding them, but that's okay, it's enough to check it out. Fire it up, let's go. Wow, there's a lot of sparks and stuff coming out of the exhaust. I really don't know what all that's about, but it doesn't look very good. But on the bright side of things, it seemed like the steering moved freely, so I feel confident about going ahead and finishing that. Well, unfortunately, I ran out of welding wire, but you can see at least I had enough to finish up the tie rod. So I got this all supported in double shear now. Nothing crazy fancy, you know. I wish that I was you know, using a double-ended PSC steering on Dana 60s and whatever. I kind of feel like a fool for working on this Model 25, but hey, it is what it is. It's on there. It steers better. Got my headers basically done, minus the welding. I'm gonna head on out to the welding supply store to get some more wire, but that'll basically conclude this video. Like, share, subscribe, and let's keep seeing more of this thing.